Imagine this for a moment. What if everything society sold you about independence, empowerment, and living your best life without needing anyone else turned out to be the biggest bait and switch in modern history? What if the very freedoms that were celebrated as triumphs are now quietly unraveling the lives of millions of women, leaving them isolated, broke, and facing health crises that their grandmothers never had to endure at the same age? Stick with me until the very end today, because by the time we're done, you're going to see exactly why this crisis is accelerating faster than anyone wants to admit, and why the consequences are going to hit like a freight train for an entire generation of women who thought they didn't need men. If you're getting value from this kind of no holds barred truth, do me a favor right now, smash that like button, share this video with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe if you want more great angry guy content dropping regularly. And listen, if you're serious about taking control of your financial future in these uncertain times, head over to Angry's Crypto Academy. That's where I teach real people how to properly buy, sell, trade, and most importantly, safeguard their crypto assets so they can protect and grow their wealth no matter what the economy does. The link is in the description. Go check it out right now while it's on your mind. Let me paint a picture for you, because this isn't just some abstract theory or angry rant. This is reality unfolding in real time. And it's heartbreaking if you step back and really look at it. Go on TikTok right now, scroll for 5 minutes, and you'll see them. Young women, mid 20s to late 30s, sitting in their cars or their empty apartments, tears streaming down their faces, recording raw, unfiltered confessions that's straight to camera. I can't do this alone anymore, they say. I thought I didn't need a man, but feminism lied to me. It betrayed us. I threw away my best years, and now I'm exhausted, broke, and lonely. These aren't fringe cases. These are everyday women, teachers, nurses, marketers, influencers who bought the narrative hook, line, and sinker, and now the mask is off. They spent the last decade, sometimes longer, repeating the mantras: I don't need a man. Men are trash. I'm a boss babe. My career is my husband. Kids would just hold me back. They cheered on movements that painted masculinity as toxic, that weaponized accusations to destroy lives without evidence, that celebrated riding the carousel through their prime years, chasing the top 5% of men who would never commit. And men were paying attention quietly, carefully. We listened to every word. We watched the divorce courts rigged against us. We saw the false allegations ruin good men. We read the statistics on hypergamy and declining marriage rates. And slowly, deliberately, millions of us made a decision. We're done playing a game that's designed for us to lose. We walked away, not in anger at first, though anger came later for many, but in simple self preservation. We went our own way. We built our peace. We focused on our purpose, our finances, our health, our brotherhoods. And now, as the consequences start rolling in like a slow moving tsunami, those same women who told us we were worthless, replaceable, and obsolete are suddenly realizing something terrifying. Men weren't the problem. Men were the solution they voluntarily rejected. But here's where it gets brutal, and I mean truly brutal. This isn't just about loneliness or dating apps full of ghosts. This is about something far deeper and far more irreversible: the collapse of women's health, wealth, and support systems at a scale we've never seen before in modern history. And the data doesn't lie, no matter how much people want to spin it. Let me take you back a bit, because to understand how bad this has gotten, we have to look at where we came from. Think about your grandmother or great grandmother if you're a millennial or Gen Z. A woman born in the 1930s, 1940s, maybe early 1950s, life wasn't perfect, far from it. Limited career options, societal pressure to marry young, all of that. But look at the fundamentals. Most of them married in their early 20s to a decent man who provided and protected. They had children relatively young, built families, had community support through churches or neighborhoods, and yes, they had husbands who were there when the hard times hit, when illness came, when money got tight, when old age crept in. there was someone by their side, a partner, a provider, a protector. Now, fast forward to today. The Population Reference Bureau, hardly a red pill YouTube channel, just released a devastating report titled Losing More Ground, Revisiting Young Women's Well-Being Across Generations. This is an opinion. This is cold, hard data comparing women aged 25 to 34 today, mostly millennials with Gen Z right on their heels, to the same age group from previous generations, all the way back to the silent generation. And the findings? They're shocking. Despite all the supposed progress, more college degrees, higher earnings in some fields, more independence, young women today are doing dramatically worse on almost every measurable marker of health and safety than their grandmothers were at the same age. Let that sink in. Their grandmothers, who supposedly lived in the dark ages of patriarchy, were healthier, safer, and in many ways happier than the empowered, independent women of 2025. Let's go through this step by step because these numbers deserve to be heard loud and clear. First, mental health. The report documents a catastrophic decline. Rates of serious psychological distress among young women have skyrocketed. Feelings of sadness, hopelessness, worthlessness, these aren't just fleeting emotions anymore. They're epidemic. Suicide rates for women aged 25 to 34 have nearly doubled compared to Generation X at the same age, jumping from 4.4 deaths per 100,000 to over 7 per 100,000. Nearly doubled in one generation. And remember, Gen X was already worse than the boomers. We're talking about women who have everything society said they needed to be happy: degrees, careers, freedom, travel pics on Instagram, wine nights with the girls, and yet they're killing themselves at rates we haven't seen since before women's lib exploded. Why? Because humans aren't wired for isolation. Women, especially, aren't wired to go through life without intimate, committed male partnership. Study after study shows married women are happier, healthier, live longer, report higher life satisfaction, and have better mental health outcomes than single women, especially never married, childless women over 30. But we demonized marriage. We called it a trap. We told women they didn't need it. And now the bill is coming due. Physical health is collapsing too. Maternal mortality, dying while giving birth, or from pregnancy complications has surged. For women 25 to 34, the rate has climbed to levels we haven't seen in decades. Homicide rates for young women are up, reversing previous generational improvements. Obesity, chronic illness, fertility issues, all trending in the wrong direction and faster than for men in many cases. And here's the kicker: the report explicitly points to the breakdown of social structures, the aftermath of the pandemic, economic uncertainty, and yes, changes in family formation as major contributing factors. Translation: women delaying marriage, delaying kids, or foregoing them entirely, living alone, or in precarious situations without the traditional safety nets that previous generations took for granted. Let me tell you a story that drives this home. I knew a woman, let's call her Sarah, early 30s, corporate job, six-figure salary, traveled the world, had the apartment with the view, the designer bags, the live your truth captions under every photo. She spent her 20s dating casually, focusing on career, telling anyone who would listen that marriage was outdated and kids weren't in her plan until she was ready, meaning probably late 30s or early 40s, if at all. Then 2020 hit. Pandemic. Locked down alone in that fancy apartment. No boyfriend. Hadn't had a serious one in years because men can't handle a strong woman, friends scattered or busy with their own lives, family far away. Depression crept in hard, anxiety attacks, therapy, meds. She gained weight, started drinking more. Work became her only identity, but even that felt hollow. By 2023, she's 35, realizing Her fertility window is slamming shut. The good men are either taken or checked out completely, and she's facing the prospect of doing the rest of her life completely alone. No husband to lean on when she's sick, no kids to visit her in the hospital, no one to grow old with. And the worst part, she's watching her grandmother at 88, surrounded by children, grandchildren, a husband of 65 years who still holds her hand, still part of a community that rallies around them. Sarah texts me sometimes, I was lied to. I did everything right according to society, and now I'm miserable. Multiply Sarah by millions. That's where we are. And it's only going to get worse as we head into what looks like a massive global economic downturn. Women were sold the idea that they could have it all: career, independence, fun, and then seamlessly transition to family later. But biology doesn't negotiate. The wall is undefeated. Fertility plummets after 35. Energy levels drop. Health complications rise. And the men who would have been there, the reliable provider type men who wanted marriage and kids in their 20s and early 30s, they got tired of being plan B, tired of investing in women who saw them as accessories to be added later after the fun was had with someone else. So they walked, they built businesses, got in shape, traveled on their terms, learned game, or rejected it entirely. Some went full monk mode. Others date casually without commitment. But marriage? Kids? Hey guys, in a world pushing you to own nothing and be happy, crypto is your key to survival. Join Angry's Crypto Academy to master buying, selling, and trading crypto. Make huge profits and safeguard your wealth. Plus, discover the one crypto virtually no one is talking about, poised to create new millionaires in the upcoming bull run. The link is in the description of the video below. Go check it out now. Providing for a woman who spent her prime years treating men like disposable entertainment? Hard pass. The report from PRB shows that millennial women have lost ground on 8 out of 14 key indicators compared to Gen X, who had already lost ground compared to boomers. Economic security is fragile despite higher education because costs have exploded: housing, healthcare, everything. And without a dual income traditional household, many single women are one emergency away from financial ruin. Think about aging alone as a woman. Your grandmothers didn't do that. They had husbands who fixed things, carried heavy stuff, provided income, offered emotional stability, physical protection. Now imagine being 55, 65, 75 with arthritis, maybe cancer, maybe just the ordinary frailty of age. And there's no one there, no one to drive you to appointments, no one to hold your hand during chemo, no one to make sure you eat when you're too tired to cook, no children because you weren't ready until it was too late. This is the future rushing toward millions of women right now. And the irony is almost too painful to watch. The very ideology that promised liberation has delivered isolation. The movements that claim to empower women have stripped them of the one thing that historically made women thrive: committed, loving relationships with good men, built on mutual respect and complementary roles. Kevin Samuels, God rest his soul, used to warn women constantly: ladies, you can't wait forever. The summer of your youth doesn't last. Winter is coming. He was called every name in the book: misogynist, hater, whatever. But he was telling the truth out of genuine concern. And now winter has arrived, not in 10 years, right now. Millennial women are already hitting it hard. Gen Z is 2 years away from their first cohort turning 30, and they're starting from a worse position: more debt, worse mental health baselines, even more entrenched in hookup culture and social media validation traps. We're staring at the first generation of women in recorded history who will age without the traditional male protection and provision that every previous generation took for granted. And the health data proves it's already killing them faster. And the craziest part is that nobody saw it coming. Not really, not the scale of it. Everyone kept saying women are winning, but the future is female. Men are becoming obsolete, while the quiet exodus was already underway. Men didn't announce it with press conferences. We didn't march in the streets with signs. We simply stopped showing up, stopped simping, stopped caping, stopped investing time, energy, money, and future planning into women who made it crystal clear that we were, at best, an afterthought and at worst, the enemy. We watched the culture celebrate single motherhood while demonizing deadbeat dads who are often just men pushed out by a biased system. We watched family courts turn good fathers into ATM machines with weekend visitation. We watched hashtag kill all men trend next to hashtag me too weaponization that destroyed innocent lives on nothing more than an accusation. And one day, millions of us looked at each other, figuratively and literally, and said, nah, I'm good. That was the moment the script flipped forever. Now, let's keep going deeper into the PRB report because every single line is a gut punch. They measured 14 key indicators of well being for women aged 25 to 34 across generations. 14. And today's young women lost ground on 8 of them compared to Gen X at the same age, who had already lost ground on several compared to boomers in silence. 8 out of 14. That's not a blip. That's not a few bad years. That is systemic collapse disguised as progress. Let's run the numbers again so they burn into your brain. Indicator 1, serious psychological distress in the past month. Millennial women clock in at 28%. 28% report their mental health was straight up broken in the last 30 days. Gen X at the same age, 18%. Boomers, 13%. We're talking more than double the rate of their grandmothers. These are women with smartphones, therapy apps, SSRIs on demand, yoga studios on every corner, and still almost 1 in 3 is drowning inside her own head. Indicator 2, suicide mortality. I already said it, but say it with me. From 4.4 per 100,000 for Gen X to over 7 per 100,000 now. That's a 60% jump in women killing themselves between generations. And before someone says, well, men still do it more, yes, men complete more. But women's attempts and ideations are through the roof. The gap is closing in the worst possible way. Indicator 3, maternal mortality. America now has a higher rate of women dying in childbirth than some third world countries we send aid to. Black women especially, but white and Hispanic rates are climbing too. We were told feminism would fix healthcare for women. Instead, we have OBGYN wards closing across the country because no one wants to practice in a specialty where you can lose everything on one accusation. Indicator 4, homicide victimization. Young women today are more likely to be murdered than their mothers or grandmothers were at the same age. Let that one breathe for a second. All the believe women, all the restraining order apps, all the men are dangerous messaging, and women are less safe from lethal violence than when they had husbands sleeping next to them and fathers and brothers who would have burned the world down if someone touched them. Indicator 5, obesity and related chronic conditions. Over 40% of millennial women are obese before age 35. Their grandmothers, under 20%. And no, it's not body positivity. It's diabetes, heart disease, joint problems, infertility, and a dramatically shortened lifespan. The same women who told men to hit the gym spent a decade on rosé and brunches and now can't climb 2 flights of stairs without breathing hard. And it's not just the big dramatic ones. Even the small things are collapsing. Dental health, worse. Vision issues, worse. Rates of autoimmune diseases skyrocketing. Fertility, a disaster. 1 in 6 millennial women is dealing with infertility before 35, compared to 1 in 10 for Gen X and 1 in 20 for boomers. Egg freezing is now a multi-billion-dollar industry because women were sold the lie that they could party through their 20s and just science their way into motherhood at 42. Reality, Frozen eggs have a live birth success rate under 10% for women over 38. 10%. That's not a backup plan. That's a lottery ticket soaked in false hope. Let me tell you another story. I want you to meet Jessica, 37 years old, former marketing executive, made 180,000 a year at her peak, condo in Miami, flew first class everywhere. Instagram was fire, sunsets, champagne, girl gang photos. She dated athletes, models, finance bros, never anything serious because why buy the cow when you're having fun? She told her mom at 29 that marriage was a patriarchal construct designed to oppress women. Mom cried. Jessica rolled her eyes. Fast forward to last year. Laid off in the tech purge. Savings gone in 18 months between rent, student loans, and keeping up the lifestyle so the depression didn't fully swallow her. Started getting migraines that wouldn't quit, then heart palpitations. Doctor says early perimenopause, yes, at 36. Her FSH levels are those of a 45-year-old. Fertility clinic quotes her $28,000 per IVF round with donor eggs because her own are basically cooked. She's on a wait list for a second round interview at a job that pays half what she used to make. Dating apps, crickets unless she swipes on divorced dads 15 years older or men who just want to hook up. She posted a tearful TikTok last month that got 2 million views. I did everything they told me to do, and now I'm alone, and my body is breaking, and I'm terrified. Comments were brutal. Half were women in their early 20s calling her a pick me for wanting a husband now. The other half were men saying, "We warned you. You laughed. Good luck." That video is one of thousands. The I was sold a lie genre is exploding because the cope is running out. And let's talk about the financial side for a minute because this is where the rubber meets the road in a big way. Women were told, get your money, queen. So they did, sort of. Yes, more women have degrees than ever. Yes, some fields pay women well. But here's what no one advertised: the gender pay gap flips after age 35 when men's earnings keep climbing and women's plateau or drop because of kids, part time work, burnout, or straight up discrimination. But for the growing army of childless, never married women, they don't get that later life earnings bump men do from experience and promotions because many industries still reward the guy who can work 80 hours a week without family obligations. So you end up with a 38-year-old childless woman making 50 to 70,000 in a mid-level corporate job, rent to 60% of her income. She has no assets besides a depreciating car and a 401k she can't touch, and she's looking at another 45 years of grinding alone. Her married peers, husband pulling six figures, paid off house, investments, kids who will help later in life. Who won? The single cat lady meme was never about cats. It was always about poverty. Because without a husband's income, without children who become your retirement plan in old age, without the compounding wealth of a dual income traditional household, most women simply do not build wealth. They spend it on rent, travel, brunches, therapy, wine, Ubers, and trying to fill the void. And when the body starts breaking down, and it always does, the medical bills hit like a tsunami. I want you to picture the scene in 10 years. It's 2035. A 52-year-old former girl boss is in the oncology ward getting chemo, hair gone, body frail. She's got stage 3 breast cancer that could have been caught earlier if someone was around to notice the lump or make her go to appointments she kept canceling because I'm too busy. Her friends, some moved away. Some have their own families. Most are dealing with their own crises. Her phone barely buzzes. The nurses feel bad for her because no one visits. She scrolls Facebook and sees her college roommate, married at 24, four kids, husband who dropped everything to be there, surrounded by family posting, "We got this." And in that moment, Alone with the beeping machines and the smell of antiseptic, the full weight of every choice crashes down. That's not hyperbole. That's the trajectory we're on for millions. And the worst part? Men are not riding to the rescue this time. That's the part that keeps these women up at night. Previous generations of women could burn the bridge and then cry for men to rebuild it when things got hard. Wars, depressions, disasters, men showed up. But this time the bridge is gone, and the men on the other side are living better than ever. Passports in hand, gym routines locked in, businesses thriving, peace that most married men can only dream of. Younger, prettier women in other countries who didn't grow up marinated in contempt for masculinity or just straight up solitude that beats the chaos of modern dating in the West. The era of male sacrifice for ungrateful women is over. We're already seeing the early stages of what historians will call the greatest demographic and social shift in a century. Birth rates in the West are collapsing below replacement. Marriage rates are at all time lows. 50% of women aged 25 to 34 are childless right now, double what it was for boomers at the same age. And the fertility window is closing fast. Gen Z women are on track to have even fewer children than millennials, and they're starting with worse mental health, more debt, and an even more poisoned dating market. Winter isn't coming. Winter is here. And the cold is merciless. I want to read you a direct quote from the PRB report because sometimes the academics say it more politely than I ever could. Despite advances in educational attainment and some economic gains, young women today are experiencing a reversal of progress in health and safety compared to prior generations. The social and economic disruptions of recent years have hit women particularly hard, compounded by delays in family formation and weakening support networks. Translation: you broke the system that kept you alive and thriving for thousands of years, and now nature is collecting. Let me say that again, slower. You broke the system that kept you alive. Every civilization that forgot this lesson collapsed. Every single one. Rome, Greece, Weimar, doesn't matter. When you disincentivize men from protecting and providing, when you make family formation a losing proposition for the average man, when you turn half the population against the other half, the society rots from the inside. And women, for all their strengths, were never meant to shoulder the full burden of survival alone. Biology didn't design you that way. Evolution didn't design you that way. 10,000 years of human history didn't design you that way. Your grandmothers knew this intuitively. They married young, stayed close to family, built community, leaned on their men, let their men lean on them. Imperfect? Sometimes. Abusive in some cases? Yes. And those cases were tragedies. But the system, on average, worked. Women lived longer, healthier, happier lives embedded in that system than they do now, floating alone in the void of modern feminism. And now the data is screaming it from the rooftops, while the culture still pretends everything is fine. And now we have to talk about the part that almost nobody is ready for: the economic avalanche that is already rumbling down the mountain and will bury millions of these women alive in the next decade. You think things are tight now? You think rent eating 50 to 60% of a single woman's income is bad? You think student loans, credit card debt, and DoorDash habits are sustainable? Wait until the next recession hits, because it's not a question of if, it's when. And wait until the social safety net programs that women have relied on for decades start buckling under the weight of a population that has no children paying into the system. Let's be crystal clear about what's coming. The United States, Canada, the UK, most of Europe, these are Ponzi scheme economies that only work when each generation is significantly larger than the one before it, so the young can fund the retirement and healthcare of the old. But birth rates have collapsed below 1.6 in almost every Western country. South Korea is at 0.72. Italy 1.24, Spain 1.23. Even the replacement level 2.1 is nowhere in sight. Who does that hit hardest? Old women living alone with no family. Because when Social Security starts cutting benefits, and every actuary on the planet says it will be mathematically impossible to avoid by the mid 2030s, when Medicare gets rationed, when pensions evaporate, the people with no adult children, no husband, second income, or second pension, no familial safety net, they are the ones who fall first and hardest. Picture this: it's 2038. A 58-year-old former HR manager who spent her life climbing the corporate ladder is staring at a Social Security statement that just got slashed 24% across the board because the trust fund is empty. Her 401k took a 40% haircut in the 2000 to 32 to 34 crash and never recovered. Rent on her one-bedroom apartment is $3,800 a month because inventory never caught up with demand, and BlackRock owns half the units. She never bought a house because prices were too high, and she was waiting for the dip that never came. She has no kids to move in with. Her parents are gone. Her siblings, if she has any, are in the same boat. Her friends are posting GoFundMe's for medical bills. She's one fall, one cancer diagnosis, one layoff away from being that lady you see on the news living in her car with a master's degree and a rainbow flag bumper sticker. Female homelessness is already the fastest growing segment in almost every major Western city. The experts are baffled because they keep looking for drugs or domestic violence as the cause. They refuse to say the quiet part out loud. It's childless, husbandless, aging women who ran out of runway. I want you to meet Emily, 41 years old right now in 2025. Former teacher turned content creator, spent her 20s and 30s traveling, getting tattoos, doing ayahuasca retreats, posting "The world is my home" captions. She was going to have kids one day when the timing is right. She broke up with a perfectly good guy at 34 because he wasn't ambitious enough and she wanted to focus on herself. Now she's on OnlyFans, making half what she used to make in the classroom because the algorithm changed and the economy tanked. Her eggs are basically retired. She's on antidepressants and Ozempic. Her last serious prospect was a divorced dad who ghosted when she said she wasn't sure about having kids at her age, but maybe would consider it if everything felt perfect. She posted a video last week titled "Where Are All the Good Men?" with 400,000 views, and the comments absolutely cooked her alive. Emily is legion. There are millions of Emilys marching toward a cliff they still pretend is a gentle hill. And let's not sugarcoat the healthcare side of this nightmare. Women use roughly 30 to 40% more healthcare resources than men over a lifetime, especially after 50. Who do you think paid for that historically? Husbands, adult children, community structures built around the family unit. Now take all of that away and watch what happens when a 67-year-old woman with osteoporosis breaks a hip. Recovery is six figures if there are complications. Rehab facilities are overflowing. In home care is $35 an hour, and Medicaid won't cover it unless you're basically destitute. She sells the condo to pay for it, moves into a rundown assisted living place that smells like urine, and dies at 74 instead of 86 because there's no one advocating for her, no one noticing the bed sores, no one holding her hand telling her to fight. This is not doomsday fiction. This is the actuarial projection. And the most infuriating part, society is still lying to young women today. Universities are still pumping out gender studies graduates with $80,000 in debt, telling them the patriarchy is the problem. TikTok is still full of 24-year-olds saying, "I'll just adopt or use a sperm donor when I'm 40." Instagram is still selling the hot girl walk, and Delulu is the Solulu, while the wall creeps closer every single day. The cope is industrial grade at this point. I need you to understand something that very few people are willing to say plainly. Women were never meant to do this alone. Not for 80 years. Not for 50. Your biology screams for pair bonding, oxytocin, estrogen, the entire hormonal cascade. It's all optimized around long term committed partnership and motherhood in your prime fertility window. Delay that, destroy that, demonize that, and your body starts breaking down in ways we are only now beginning to quantify at scale. Depression rates, anxiety disorders, autoimmune diseases, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, early dementia, all disproportionately affecting women who never married or never had children. The strong, independent woman trope is the biggest public health deception of the last 100 years. Let me drop another story on you because stories stick. Rachel was a lawyer, top of her class, made partner at 38, never married because every guy she dated couldn't handle her success. She froze her eggs at 35, spent $22,000, tried IVF at 41, failed 3 rounds, $90,000 gone, adopted a rescue dog and called it her fur baby, started getting panic attacks on the subway, quit her job at 45 because the stress was killing her, moved back to her hometown to reinvent herself, lives in a studio apartment her brother co signed for. She's 49 now. Her mother has Alzheimer's, and Rachel is the primary caregiver because her brother has a wife and 3 kids and a full time job. Rachel's savings are evaporating on memory care facilities. She hasn't had sex in 6 years. She drinks a bottle of wine most nights just to fall asleep. She told me last month, voice shaking, I won the game everyone told me to play, and now I'm losing my mind. Rachel is not an outlier. Rachel is the prototype. And here's where the rubber really meets the road. Men know this now. We see the pattern. We watched our fathers get destroyed in divorce court. We watched our brothers pay alimony to women who cheated. We watched good men get had me too'd out of careers on zero evidence. We watched women in their prime choose the worst possible men and then demand the good men fix their lives a decade later. And we collectively said, no more. The red pill didn't radicalize men, it immunized us. We are not angry anymore. Anger is stage 1. Most of us are at stage 5. Indifference. We lifted the weights, fixed our finances, values, built businesses or remote careers, got our passports, learned game, or rejected the game entirely. Some of us date Eastern European women, Latinas, Southeast Asians who still value family, femininity, and partnership. Some of us date casually and keep it light. Some of us went full MG Tao and haven't been on a date in 5 years and report the highest happiness levels of their lives. But almost none of us are lining up to wife up a 35 plus Western woman with a body count in double digits, student debt, an attitude, and a ticking biological clock who suddenly is ready to settle down. That ship didn't just sail, we burned the dock. And that's the part that's keeping these women awake at 3 a.m., staring at the ceiling. For the first time in history, men have options, real options. Technology, remote work, global dating, cryptocurrency, the democratization of fitness and self improvement. It handed average men leverage they never had before. And the moment men got leverage, the entire sexual marketplace flipped. Women's sexual power peaks between roughly 18 to 28. Men's peaks between 35 to 50 once money, status, confidence, and options come online. Guess who's entering their peak, right? As millions of women are exiting theirs. Exactly. So when these women hit 38, 42, 45, and suddenly want the husband, the kids, the white picket fence, the man who will step up, they're looking around and the room is empty. The good men are either taken by younger women who didn't make them wait, or they're deliberately single, living better lives than most married guys. I want you to think about that for a second. Men are happier single now than married. Let that sink in. Study after study shows single men report higher life satisfaction, better mental health, more disposable income, more free time, and lower stress than married men in the modern West. Married men still do it for legacy, for children, for duty, but the raw happiness stats favor single men. That has never happened before in recorded history. Women's happiness, meanwhile, has been in free fall for 20 straight years. The General Social Survey shows women under 30 today are less happy than any cohort ever measured, less happy than during the Depression, less happy than during World War II, less happy than their great grandmothers who had to wash clothes by hand and bury children to diphtheria. We broke the social contract and told half the population they didn't need the other half. And now we're watching the consequences play out in slow motion. And the clock is merciless. Gen Z women are watching all of this unfold and still doubling down, still on the apps, still doing home math, still saying, I'll just be the cool wine aunt, still getting sleeves of tattoos and colored hair, and thinking it makes them more attractive to high value men. Still listening to podcasts that tell them their standards are self respect. The delusion is multi generational at this point. But cracks are forming. The I was lied to videos are no longer just from 35-year-olds. They're from 26-year-olds who already feel the shift, who already see the good men pairing off with 21-year-olds who bring peace instead of chaos, who already feel the anxiety creeping in when they realize the party phase didn't come with an instruction manual for how to transition out of it. Winter doesn't send a warning letter, it just shows up one morning and the pipes are frozen. And here's the part that should chill every single person watching this to the bone. We haven't even hit the steep part of the curve yet. Everything I've described so far is the warm up act, the opening scenes, the early innings. What's coming in the 2030s and 2040s is going to make today look like the good old days for a lot of these women because the first wave of true mass scale regret is only now cresting with late millennials and early Gen X. The real tsunami is the roughly 35 million Western women born between 1985 and 2005 who bought the lie at full volume. That's not a cohort. That's an entire civilization's worth of women marching into middle age and old age with no husbands, no children, shrinking social circles, bodies that are breaking down earlier than any generation in recorded history, and bank accounts that were never designed to fund 6 or 7 decades of solo living in a high inflation environment. Let me put a finer point on it. Right now, in November 2025, the oldest Gen Z is turning 28. The youngest millennials are turning 30. That means the very first edge of this demographic blade is just now sliding across women's throats. In 5 years, the youngest millennials will be 35. In 10 years, the oldest Gen Z will be 38. By 2040, the average childless, never married millennial woman will be 50 to 55 years old, staring down another 30 to 40 years of life with no safety net except a government that is mathematically guaranteed to go bankrupt before she dies. And governments know this. They're already running the numbers. The Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, they all have quiet reports that read like horror novels. The dependency ratio, the number of working age people per retiree, is about to go off a cliff. In 2000, there were about 5 workers for every retiree in most Western countries. By 2040, it will be under 2 in many places. Who fills that gap? Nobody, because there are no kids. And who relied most on the promise that the state would take care of them in old age? Women who chose careers and freedom over family. You were sold 2 lies at once. First, that you didn't need a man or children, and second, that the government would be your husband in old age. Both of those lies are collapsing at the exact same time. Let me tell you about Maria. 44 right now, grew up in a traditional Italian American family. Her nonna lived to 96, surrounded by 4 children, 12 grandchildren, great grandchildren running in and out. Nonna never worked a day outside the home. Maria watched that and said, I'm not going to be trapped like that. Got a master's in social work, marched for women's rights, dated musicians and activists, got a septum piercing at 38 to reclaim her power. She's a therapist now, ironically, specializing in women's empowerment. Last year, her mother had a stroke. Maria is an only child. She's the one handling the nursing home bills, the doctors, the decisions. She's burning through her savings at a terrifying rate. Her mother cries every time she visits because she sees the exhaustion in Maria's eyes and knows there will be nobody to do this for her daughter one day. Maria told me over coffee last month, voice flat. I spent my whole life helping other women become strong and independent, and now I'm watching what that actually means when you're old and sick. I'm terrified. Maria's waking up. Millions more will follow, and there will be no pill strong enough to put them back to sleep. And we're already seeing the early warning signs of what's coming in the homelessness data. In Los Angeles, the latest point in time count showed women over 45 as the fastest growing homeless demographic. Not drug addicts, not veterans, educated, formerly middle class women who ran out of money, had a health scare, lost the job, couldn't make rent, and had nobody to call. In New York, shelters are opening female only wings because the need exploded. In London, the same story. They call them the invisible homeless. Women sleeping in cars, on friends' couches, in 24-hour gyms because they're too ashamed to pitch a tent on the street like the men do. And it's going to get orders of magnitude worse because when the boomers fully retire and start dying off, the real estate wealth transfer everyone is counting on, a huge chunk of that housing stock is going to flood the market at the same time that interest rates and insurance costs make it impossible for single earners to buy. Prices will crash in some areas, but taxes, HOA fees, and maintenance will still eat single women alive. You'll own a paid off house you can't afford to heat or repair because there's no second income and no kids to help. I want you to imagine being 68 years old, widowed, or never married, living in a 3-bedroom house you can't maintain. The roof leaks, the yard is overgrown. You can't climb a ladder anymore. You can't afford to pay someone $15,000 to fix the roof. You sell at a loss, move into a crappy apartment, and 2 years later, you're on a 5-year wait list for subsidized senior housing that looks like a prison block. That's the best case scenario for a lot of these women. Worst case, straight to the streets or a state funded nursing home that's basically a warehouse for the dying. And let's talk about those nursing homes for a minute, because this is where the nightmare goes full dystopian. The industry is already facing a staffing crisis. By 2035, they project a shortage of over 1 million workers in the US alone. Who works those jobs now? Mostly immigrant women and poor women who still have traditional values. But as birth rates collapse globally, even those labor pools are drying up. So you'll have facilities full of childless, husbandless former feminists being cared for barely by overworked aides who don't speak great English and hate their jobs, wiping the asses of women who spent their lives telling men they were obsolete. The irony will be palpable. And the mental health fallout, we don't have institutions big enough. The suicide rate among women over 50 is already climbing fast. When the full weight of regret hits, when the I can have it all generation realizes they got none of it, the psychiatric system will collapse under the weight. We're talking tens of millions of women on SSRIs, benzodiazepines, alcohol, whatever it takes to numb the pain of looking around at 65 and realizing every choice led to solitude. You see it already in the eat, pray, love coping mechanism. Woman hits 40, single, panicking, books a solo trip to Bali or Tuscany, thinking a vision board, and some yoga will fix the gaping hole in her soul. Comes back with more tattoos, a new crystal collection, and a post about healing her inner child. 6 months later, she's back on Zoloft, and the hole is bigger than ever. That industry, retreats, coaches, and shamans, ayahuasca ceremonies, is a multi-billion-dollar grift preying on female regret. And it's only getting started. And meanwhile, the passport bro phenomenon is shifting into second gear. And by 2030, it will be fifth. Men in their 30s, 40s, 50s with remote income are leaving in droves. Colombia, Thailand, Philippines, Mexico, Eastern Europe, Places where women still smile at men, still cook, still want families, still see marriage as a partnership instead of a heist. These men aren't rich. They're upper working class to middle class guys who figured out location arbitrage and basic game. They're marrying 25-year-old beauties who adore them, having children, building lives that Western women price themselves out of. And the Western women left behind? They're making TikToks calling these men predators, losers, sex tourists, while secretly refreshing the dating apps at 2 a.m., wondering why zero men are messaging them anymore. The apps themselves are collapsing under the weight of this shift. Bumble's stock is down over 80% from its high. Tinder's growth has flatlined. Hinge is pivoting to serious relationships because even the hookup crowd is burning out. Women are reporting the most depressing dating experiences of all time: endless ghosting, low effort men, or outright contempt in the DMs. Because men finally realize the juice isn't worth the squeeze. And the contempt is earned. After decades of being told we're the problem, we looked around and said, fine, problem solved, we're gone. This trend is irreversible, short of total civilizational collapse, followed by a forced reset, because you can't put the genie back in the bottle. Men have seen paradise on the other side of walking away. We've tasted peace, financial freedom, brotherhood without judgment, the ability to travel, build, create, lift, learn, and live without constant criticism and entitlement. No amount of shaming language on incel, bitter, manosphere, toxic works anymore because the shame has lost its power when the alternative is so much better. Women can't negotiate desire. They can't shame men into coming back. They can't legislate commitment. The government can't force men to marry. All the king's horses and all the king's men can't put this Humpty Dumpty back together again. The only thing that could theoretically reverse it would be a complete cultural revolution where women en masse rejected feminism, dropped the entitlement, got in shape, learned to cook, embraced submission and traditional roles, and started pursuing men instead of waiting to be chosen. But that would require humility on a scale we've never seen. It would require admitting the last 60 years were a catastrophic mistake. And pride, female pride especially, is the one drug no one has figured out how to cure. So it's not happening. What is happening is the greatest transfer of loneliness, poverty, and regret in human history, all falling on the heads of the very women who were told they were winning. Your grandmothers are looking down from heaven, shaking their heads, saying, we tried to warn you, but you called us oppressed. Kevin Samuels is looking down, saying, I told y'all winter was coming, and y'all laughed. And millions of men who walked away are looking around at their peaceful, abundant lives and saying, best decision I ever made. This is the world we live in now. And it's only November 2025. Buckle up. And now we reach the final stretch, the part where we pull the camera back all the way and look at what this actually means for society as a whole. Because this isn't just about individual women crying on TikTok or men sipping cocktails in Medellin. This is about the death of a civilization in slow motion. And every single one of us is going to feel the aftershocks, whether we like it or not. Because when you have tens of millions of aging women with no children, no husbands, no wealth, and no purpose, you don't just get sadness, you get instability. You get political radicalization. You get a voting bloc that is desperate, terrified, and willing to burn everything down if it means someone finally pays attention to their pain. We saw the preview in 2020 with the defund the police hysteria and the teacher Karen meltdowns. That was nothing compared to what happens when 50 million post wall Western women realize the retirement they were promised doesn't exist. And the men they spent decades demonizing are living their best lives on another continent. History is very clear on this. Societies that fail to reproduce and fail to protect their women collapse every single time, no exceptions. And right now, the West is running the biggest antenatal, anti family experiment ever attempted. And the control group is every civilization that ever existed before 1960. Guess who's winning? The numbers are so brutal, they almost feel fake, but they're not. By 2040, the United States alone will have over 30 million excess women over the age of 50 with no living children. 30 million. That's larger than the entire population of Canada. These women will be competing for a shrinking pool of healthcare workers, subsidized housing, and government benefits that simply will not exist at the levels required because there are not enough young people paying taxes. Japan is the dress rehearsal. They're 20 years ahead of us on this timeline. Right now in Japan, 1 in 4 people over 65 has no living children. Adult diaper sales outpace baby diapers. Old people die alone in their apartments and aren't discovered for weeks. They call them kodokushi, the lonely deaths. Nursing homes are full of women who outlived their husbands and had one child who moved away or never existed. The government is literally paying men to marry and have kids because they can see the cliff. We're next, and we're going to hit it harder because our women were sold an even more aggressive version of the independence lie than Japanese women ever were. Let me tell you one last story, the one that keeps me up at night when I really let it sink in. Her name was Linda. I met her last year at a coffee shop in Austin. 71 years old, former university professor, women's studies department, naturally, divorced twice, 2 kids. One died of an overdose at 28. The other hasn't spoken to her in 15 years because of the way she treated his father. Linda spent the 80s and 90s marching, writing books about smashing the patriarchy, telling generations of young women that marriage was slavery and motherhood was a trap. She retired at 65 with a decent pension, but inflation and medical bills ate it alive. She's down to her last $40,000. Lives in a 400 square foot studio that smells like cat litter and regret. She has breast cancer, stage 2, but keeps putting off the mastectomy because she's terrified of the recovery and there's nobody to take care of her afterward. Every day she sits at the same table from 8 a.m. to noon, scrolling Facebook, looking at pictures of her former students, now in their 40s and 50s, posting about their empty nests, their divorces, their own health scares. She cries quietly into her coffee. The barista told me Linda asked her last month if she could pay in installments for a $3 latte because her card was declined. Linda is the ghost of Christmas future for every feminist academic, every girl boss influencer, every I don't need a man TikToker who thinks 75 looks like Meryl Streep on a yacht. Linda is what happens when the ideology wins and biology collects the bill 30 years later. And there will be millions of Lindas. Millions. We are creating a generation of elderly women who will die poor, sick, and alone at a scale that dwarfs every previous human tragedy, short of war and famine. And the worst part, the absolute soul crushing part, is that it was all preventable. All of it. Every bit of this pain was optional. All it would have taken was for women to listen to their grandmothers instead of Gloria Steinem, to choose decent men in their 20s instead of riding the carousel until the music stopped, to build families instead of follower counts, to understand that freedom without responsibility becomes a cage with golden bars. But they didn't. They chose the lie. And now the truth is here, and it's merciless. Men walked away because we finally realized we were never the problem. We were the prize all along. And prizes don't chase, they get chosen, or they stay on the shelf and build something better for themselves. So, to every woman watching this who still has time, late 20s, early 30s, listen very carefully. The clock is not your friend, the apps are not your friend. Your degree is not your husband. Your wine nights are not your support system. Your body count is not empowerment. Your independence will not keep you warm at night when you're 65 and the cancer diagnosis comes in. Find a good man, lock him down, have his children while you still can, build something real because the alternative is the slow, quiet horror show I just spent 15,000 words describing. And to the men, keep walking, keep building, keep leveling up. The peace that you have right now is the most valuable currency on earth. Guard it with your life. This is the great reckoning, and this is winter, and it's only 2025. What did you think about all this? Do you agree? Do you see it playing out in your own life or the lives of people around you? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one. Like the video if you like it. Don't forget to subscribe. And if you like the video, share the video. And just remember that all roads lead to MWA, men walking away, and cheers.
Nothing says you care like crypto. Nothing can compare. Nothing says you care like crypto. Oh, nothing can compare to crypto.